The three suns of the Ardelian cluster painted the council chamber in soft golden light. Around the curved table sat 12 beings from different worlds. Their forms varied, but all sharing the same look of dread. Commander Trell, head of the Ardelian Defense Council, stood before the large view screen. His tall, slender frame cast a long shadow across the polished floor. The blue skin on his face had paled to an ashen gray. He had not slept in 3 days. "Play it again," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. The screen flickered to life. Static filled the room, broken by bursts of panicked words. "They're breaking through the outer shields. Massive ships. Weapons we've never... Please. Send help, they're harvesting, they take everything." The voice dissolved into screams before cutting to silence. "That is the final transmission from Nebulan 7, Trell said. Our outermost colony, population of 3 million. Now silent." The council members shifted uncomfortably. Their species had known peace for so long that the concept of violence on this scale seemed impossible. "What of our defense fleet?" asked Council Member Lori, her forearms wrapped tightly around herself. Trell touched a control panel. The screen changed to show a collection of sleek ships. "Our entire fleet consists of 50 patrol vessels and 12 larger carriers," he said. "All designed for scientific exploration and occasional peacekeeping. None built for war." "And the enemy?" asked another counselor. Trell's hand trembled as he changed the display again. Grainy images appeared, captured from long-range scans. Dark, angular ships moved in perfect formation. They dwarfed the Ardelian vessels that lay broken around them. We count at least 200 ships. Heavily armed. Highly organized. Based on their speed, they will reach our next colony world in 5 days. The central planets in 3 weeks. The room fell silent. The Ardelian cluster contained 52 inhabited worlds home to dozens of peaceful species. None had faced real danger in centuries. "We must evacuate the border worlds immediately," said Council Member Venn, his voice shaking. "To where?" asked Trell. "If these invaders cannot be stopped, nowhere in the cluster will be safe." Senior diplomat. Mira rose from her seat. Her white robes shimmered in the sunlight. "We have allies," she said. "The Floraxians. The Mindari Collective. We should call upon them." Trell shook his head. "I already have. The Floraxians have even less military capability than we do. The Mindari have promised to send ships, but they are 3 months away at top speed." "Then we are doomed," whispered Lori. Trell took a deep breath. The next words he would speak might change the fate of their civilization forever. "There is one other option." He pressed another button. The screen changed to show a blue-green planet wrapped in swirling white clouds. "Earth," he said simply. The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. "The Deathworlders?" gasped Mara. "You cannot be serious." "The Terrans are quarantined for good reason," said Council Member Fenn, his eye stalks wavering in agitation. "They evolved on a radiation-blasted world with crushing gravity and toxic atmosphere. They are designed for constant violence." "They are monsters," added another voice. Trell held up his hand for silence. "The Terrans are dangerous, yes. Their bodies are reinforced with redundant systems, their minds shaped by constant struggle for survival. But our long-range scans have confirmed they have developed their own space travel, despite our quarantine." "All the more reason to keep them away," said Mira. "If we invite such creatures here, who's to say they won't be worse than whatever comes from the void?" Trell moved closer to the table, looking each council member in the eyes. "I have studied Earth's transmissions for years. Yes, they have a history of warfare that would make any of us sick with horror, but they also have something we lack, the ability to fight and win against impossible odds." He turned back to the screen, enlarging the image of Earth. "When we first discovered them 300 years ago, they were primitive, just beginning to explore their own world. We chose to quarantine rather than invite them into our community. We feared their potential for violence." "And rightfully so," interrupted Mara. Trell continued. But in doing so, we may have lost potential protectors. Everything I have seen suggests that humans have a strong drive to defend others. They call it their protective instinct. They have stories, myths, art, all centered around the strong defending the weak. Pretty ideas to cover their savage nature, scoffed Fenn. Perhaps, admitted Trell. But right now we need savages. We need creatures evolved to fight and survive. We need Deathworlders. The council fell into uncomfortable silence. How would we even contact them? Asked Lori finally. The quarantine protocols. There is an emergency frequency, said Trell. Established during first contact but never used. If they still monitor it. This is madness, said Mira, rising to her full height. These humans, they are not like us. Their bodies are dense with muscle. Their reactions unnaturally fast. Their tolerance for pain is horrifying. The gravity of their world is nearly twice ours. The atmosphere thick with oxygen that would make our minds race with panic. They evolved as prey, then became predators. Violence is written into their very cells. And that, said Trell firmly, is exactly why we need them. He pressed a final button. A simple communication interface appeared on screen. I call for a vote, he said. Do we activate the emergency beacon and request aid from Earth, or do we face extinction alone? The vote was close. 7-4. 5 against. As the signal was prepared, Diplomat Mara approached Trell privately. Do you understand what you've done? She asked, her voice low. If the humans come, and if they help us defeat this enemy, they will want something in return. A place in our cluster. Access to our worlds. Trell nodded slowly. Yes. After centuries of isolation, we will have to accept them as neighbors. And if they turn on us afterward, when there is no common enemy. Trell looked back at the screen, where the message was being encoded for transmission. Then we traded certain destruction for possible destruction, he said. That is the best choice we have. The emergency beacon activated with a soft ping. The ancient frequency, untouched for centuries, carried their desperate plea across the stars. 2. Earth Central Command, from Ardelian Cluster Council, Emergency Protocol. Alpha. We face extinction from unknown invaders, requesting immediate military assistance. We have no other hope. The message shot outward at faster than light speed toward the quarantined blue world, the world of Deathworlders, the world of humans. No one knew if they still listened to the old frequency. No one knew if they would respond after centuries of being shunned. No one knew if they would come as saviors or conquerors. But they had to try. The alternative was too terrible to consider. Trell looked out the wide window at the 3 suns setting on the horizon. Now we wait, he said softly, and hope the monsters we know will save us from the monsters we don't. The waves crashed against the small fishing boat as Admiral Jack Norton cast his line into the deep blue waters. His weathered face, lined with the marks of a lifetime of service, turned toward the morning sun. He breathed in the salty air and smiled. After 40 years in the United Earth Defense Force, retirement felt both strange and wonderful. The peaceful moment was shattered by the urgent beeping of his emergency communicator. Norton frowned. That particular tone hadn't sounded in over a decade. He pulled the device from his pocket and read the flashing message. His eyes widened. Well, I'll be damned, he muttered to himself, already packing up his fishing gear. They finally called. 24 hours later, Norton stood on the bridge of the UEFS Thunderchild, the massive flagship of humanity's deep space fleet. At 1,700 meters long, it was the largest warship ever built by human hands. Through the massive viewports, he could see dozens of other ships gathering, cruisers, destroyers, troop carriers, and support vessels. Admiral on deck, called out the watch officer. The bridge crew snapped to attention. At ease, Norton said, moving to the Central Command Station. Status report. Communications Officer Petra, a tall woman with short black hair, approached with a data pad. The signal's authentic, sir, she confirmed. It's using protocols established during the Ardelian first contact before they ghosted us. Norton frowned at the star chart displayed on the main screen. The Ardelian cluster glowed as a bright point of light. Currently 4 days travel at maximum faster than light speed. They quarantined Earth, declared us too dangerous to join their precious community, and now they're calling for help? He shook his head in disbelief. Intelligence Officer Tom stepped forward, his uniform crisp despite the short notice of their deployment. "We've compiled what we know about the Ardelians, sir," he said. "The Ardelian cluster contains 52 habitable worlds with a variety of peaceful species, all evolved on what we would classify as garden worlds. Low gravity, mild climate, limited predators, abundant resources." Tom brought up images of the Ardelians and their worlds, beautiful, lush planets orbiting gentle stars. The Ardelians themselves appeared delicate with slender bodies and fine features. Their technology is highly advanced in some areas, medicine, environmental science, communication, but they possess minimal weapons technology. Their entire defense fleet is essentially a glorified Coast Guard. "They never needed to fight," Norton mused. "No evolutionary pressure to develop those instincts." "Exactly, sir. They're basically sheep calling wolves for protection." Security Chief Rivera, a stocky woman with a perpetual scowl, snorted from her station. "What's in it for us? They locked us out of galactic society for 300 years because our world was too harsh, and we were too potentially violent. Now they want our help." Norton's expression hardened. He turned to face his senior staff. "We're not wolves," he said firmly. "We're shepherds, and humanity has spent too long in isolation." He brought up a new display, the message from the Ardelian Council, along with the grainy images they had included of the attacking force. "President Calloway has authorized a full response fleet, all 7 battle groups, support ships, and colony vessels. Everything." Science Officer Reed looked shocked, adjusting his glasses nervously. "Sir, that's nearly 30% of our total forces." "Sometimes you go all in," Norton replied, remembering Earth's own brutal history of warfare and how it shaped human resolve, especially when the stakes are this high. He studied the images of the enemy ships. Their design was like nothing he had seen before, angular, efficient, without any apparent concern for aesthetics. Pure function. "Whatever these invaders are, they're methodical," he observed. "Look at the attack pattern on Nebulon 7, systematic, thorough. No survivors left behind." "Reminds me of the harvester ants back on Earth," said Tom. "They strip an area clean before moving on." Norton nodded grimly. "Send the response to the Ardelians. Message received. The Deathworlders are coming. Hold the line. 4 days until arrival." As Petra transmitted the message, Norton turned to address the entire bridge crew. "I know what many of you are thinking. Why should we help those who rejected us? Who feared us? Who called us monsters?" He paused, looking at each face in turn. "Because that is what makes us human. We protect. We defend. We stand against the darkness, not because it's easy or because there's something in it for us, but because it's right." He walked to the viewport, gazing out at the growing fleet. "Humanity spent thousands of years fighting itself. We nearly destroyed our own world multiple times. But we learned. We grew. We united. And now we have a chance to show the galaxy that the very traits they feared in us, our strength, our tenacity, our willingness to fight, are exactly what make us valuable allies." "And if these Ardelians still fear us after we save them?" asked Rivera, voicing the question many were thinking. Norton smiled slightly. "Then we'll have proven them right about our capacity for violence and wrong about how we choose to use it." He returned to the command chair. "Set course for the Ardelian cluster. Maximum speed, all ships to battle readiness. Let's show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do when they're defending life instead of taking it." As the massive human fleet prepared for faster-than-light travel, activity bustled throughout the ships. In the armories, troops checked weapons and battlesuits. In medical bays, doctors prepared for casualties. In engineering sections, technicians fine-tuned engines and weapons systems. On the Thunderchild's observation deck, Norton stood alone, watching Earth grow smaller as they moved toward the jump point. Captain Lee, his second in command, joined him silently. Having second thoughts, sir? She asked after a moment. Norton shook his head. Just thinking about history. For centuries we wondered if we were alone in the universe. Then we discovered we weren't. Only to be told we weren't welcome. Too dangerous. Too unpredictable. And now? Lee prompted. Now we get to show them why Deathworlders make the best friends and the worst enemies. He turned to her with determination in his eyes. Order the fleet to jump. Let's go make some new friends. The massive engines of the human ships glowed bright blue as they prepared to tear a hole in space-time. One by one they vanished into the fabric of space, leaving Earth behind. Their destination, a cluster of peaceful worlds facing extinction. Their purpose, to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their capacity for violence, but their willingness to use that capacity to protect others. The Deathworlders were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Ardelian orbital station hung in space like a gleaming jewel. Its elegant curves and transparent sections reflected the light of 3 suns. Commander Trell stood at the large observation window, his 3 hearts beating rapidly. 4 days had passed since they sent their desperate message to Earth. 4 days of waiting, of fear, of wondering if help would come. Any sign of them? Asked diplomat Mira, joining him at the window. Her usually perfect appearance was marred by dark circles under her eyes. Nothing yet, Trell replied. But they said 4 days. It's only been... A sudden alarm interrupted him. A junior officer rushed to the sensor station. Multiple space-time ruptures detected. The officer called out, voice shaking. Massive energy signatures. Trell and Mira watched in stunned silence as the fabric of space tore open before their station. First one ship emerged, then another, then dozens more. The sight made Trell's breath catch in his throat. The human vessels were nothing like the elegant Ardelian ships. These were angular, powerful machines built for war. Their hulls were marked with symbols and numbers, bristling with weapon systems, unlike anything in the Ardelian design philosophy. The flagship at the center dwarfed their entire defense fleet. By the 3 suns, whispered Mara. What have we invited here? The communications console chimed. Incoming transmission from the human flagship, announced the communications officer. Put it through, ordered Trell, straightening his posture. The screen lit up to show a human male with gray hair and a weathered face. He wore a dark uniform decorated with symbols of rank. This is Admiral Jack Norton of the United Earth Defense Force, the human said. We received your distress call. The Thunderchild and her battle groups are at your service. Trell stepped forward. Admiral Norton, I am Commander Trell of the Ardelian Defense Council. On behalf of the 52 worlds of our cluster, I thank you for answering our call. Norton nodded. We've brought a full response fleet. Our flagship will dock. With your station for strategic planning, we request a meeting with your leadership immediately. Of course, Trell agreed. We will prepare for your arrival. As the transmission ended, Mara grabbed Trell's arm. Did you see the size of that fleet? She hissed. They must have sent a significant portion of their military forces, which means they take the threat seriously, Trell replied. That's good news. Or they're using this opportunity to position themselves for something else, Mara warned. Trell had no answer to that. 2 hours later, Admiral Norton and his command staff entered the Ardelian Council chamber. The difference between the species was immediately apparent. The humans moved with efficient precision, their bodies dense with muscle, their eyes constantly scanning the room. Even in the station's lighter gravity, they seemed solid, substantial. The Ardelians, with their tall, slender frames and graceful movements, looked fragile by comparison. Norton approached Trell and extended his hand. Commander Trell, I presume. Trell hesitated before carefully taking the human's hand, copying the greeting gesture he had seen in Earth transmissions. The human's grip was firm but controlled, as if Norton was carefully holding back his strength. Welcome to the Ardelian cluster, Admiral, Trell said, trying to hide his nervousness. May I introduce Senior Diplomat Mara and the members of our Defense Council? Norton nodded to each in turn, then introduced his own staff. Communications Officer Petra, Intelligence Officer Tom, Security Chief Rivera, and Science Officer Reed. The formal greetings completed, they moved to the large meeting table at the center of the chamber. Norton studied the delicate, willowy Ardelians with interest. Now that he was seeing them in person, he understood why they had been so afraid of humans. To them, humans must seem like creatures made of stone, heavy, dense, and built for violence. Your message indicated an invasion force attacking your outer colonies, Norton said, getting straight to business. We've deployed scout ships to assess the threat while our main fleet stands ready. Trell gestured to a holographic display showing the Ardelian cluster and the path of destruction left by the invaders. They have already destroyed one colony world. 3 million lives lost. Their fleet is moving toward our next settlement. At their current speed, they will reach it tomorrow. Diplomat Mara studied the humans across the table. After centuries of quarantine, why would you help us? She asked directly. We did not treat your species kindly. Norton's smile didn't reach his eyes. Because that's what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. The awkward reunion was interrupted when Officer Tom received a message on his device. Admiral, the scout ships have reported back, he said urgently. Put it on the main display, Norton ordered. The holographic display changed to show footage captured by the scout ships. The images were clear and horrifying. Strange ships of black metal moved with perfect coordination, surrounding an Ardelian colony. Beams of energy cut through defenses like they were made of paper. Smaller craft descended to the surface, gathering resources and, most disturbing of all, collecting living beings. They're systematic, observed Tom. No emotion, no hesitation, just cold calculation. What are they? Asked one of the Ardelian counselors, voice shaking. Science Officer Reed adjusted his glasses as he studied the data. Based on our analysis, they appear to be a machine-organic hybrid species. We're designating them the Vex. Their ships show evidence of both technological and biological components working as a single system. Like a hive, suggested Tom. Or a collective intelligence. Norton turned to the Ardelian Council. We'll need to coordinate. Your knowledge of the local space, combined with our combat capabilities, gives us the best chance of stopping them. Trell hesitated. Our people have no experience with warfare. We evolved without major predators. Our species never developed the instincts or technologies for large-scale combat. Then learn, Norton replied firmly. Or prepare for extinction. The Vex won't care about your peaceful intentions. Mara looked offended, but Trell nodded slowly. What do you need from us? He asked. Norton's expression softened slightly. First, complete access to your star charts and sensor networks. Second, a staging area for our troops and ships. Third, volunteers from your people to act as guides and advisors. And after? Mara asked. If we defeat these Vex, what then? Then we talk about the future, Norton said. About a new relationship between Earth and the Ardelian cluster. But first, we fight. As the human officers began laying out battle plans, the Ardelians witnessed the full extent of humanity's capacity for strategic violence. The humans discussed attack formations, weapon yields, and acceptable casualties with a calm efficiency that was both impressive and terrifying. Trell watched as Norton directed his staff, pointing out weaknesses in the enemy formation, suggesting countermeasures, calculating risks. In that moment, he understood why his ancestors had feared these Deathworlders, but he also understood something else. These humans had come not to conquer, but to protect. The very instincts that made them dangerous, their aggression, their territorial nature, their pack mentality, were now turned outward, against a common enemy. We'll deploy the main fleet here, Norton was saying, pointing to a position near the next colony in the Vex path. The Ardelian ships will serve as early warning and evacuation support. You want us to run while you fight? Asked an Ardelian. Counselor, I want you to do what you're good at. Norton replied. Save lives. Leave the killing to us. Trell met Norton's gaze across the table. Human and Ardelian, Death Worlder and Garden Worlder, predator and prey, united by a common threat. We will do our part, Trell promised, and perhaps learn from you in the process. Norton nodded once. The battle begins tomorrow. The Death Worlders will stand between your people and extinction. Let's make sure we all live to tell about it. The combined human-Ardelian fleet formed a protective line before the colony world of Nebulan 6. The sleek, elegant Ardelian vessels looked like toys next to the massive human warships. Admiral Norton stood on the bridge of the Thunderchild, studying the tactical display with intense focus. Vex fleet approaching, announced Communications Officer Petra. Estimated arrival in 30 minutes. Norton nodded, his face calm despite the tension filling the bridge. Several Ardelian observers stood at the back of the command center, their eyes wide as they watched the controlled chaos of human battle. Preparations. All ships report ready, Admiral, said Captain Lee from her station. Good, Norton replied. Remind all captains, hold formation and wait for my command. No heroics. The minutes ticked by slowly. On the main view screen, the stars shone bright and peaceful against the black of space. It was hard to believe that death approached. Vex fleet dropping out of faster-than-light travel, reported the sensor officer suddenly. Multiple signatures. Count is 217 vessels. The view screen shifted to show the enemy fleet. Black ships moved in perfect formation like a swarm of insects. They flew with mechanical precision, no ship out of place by even a meter. They're scanning us, said Science Officer Reed, watching. His instruments. They've already adapted to our scanning frequencies. They're learning our patterns. Norton nodded grimly. That's what they do. But adaptation goes both ways. He turned to address the bridge crew. This is what we trained for. The Vex rely on patterns and calculations. We rely on courage and determination. Remember your training, but trust your instincts. Norton pressed a button on his command chair. All ships, this is Admiral Norton. Engage as planned. Group 1, forward. Groups 2 and 3, hold position. Godspeed. The first wave of human ships moved toward the Vex fleet. Heavy cruisers and destroyers fired their main weapons in a coordinated barrage. Brilliant energy beams cut across space, striking the front line of Vex vessels. For a moment, it seemed the attack had worked. Several Vex ships exploded in silent bursts of light. But then the remaining enemy vessels adjusted their shields and the next volley of human weapons did far less damage. They're adapting to our weapon frequencies, reported Reed with alarm. As expected, Norton said calmly. Signal, Group 2, begin attack pattern Beta. The second wave of human ships moved forward, launching swarms of smaller fighter craft. The tiny ships darted between the larger Vex vessels, targeting weak points with precise strikes. The Vex responded with devastating efficiency. Energy beams lashed out, catching several human destroyers. One exploded in a ball of fire, another drifted, crippled. Commander Trell watched from his position near the back of the bridge, his face pale. Your people are dying for our worlds, he said to Security Chief Rivera, who stood beside him. That's what soldiers do, Rivera responded without looking away from the tactical displays. We understood the cost when we volunteered. The battle continued to unfold. The Vex adapted quickly to each human tactic, adjusting their shields and weapons. Several more human ships were hit. Damage reports filled the communications channels. This isn't working, Norton muttered, watching the tactical display as the Vex continued their methodical advance. They're calculating every move, countering, with perfect efficiency. He stood suddenly, a new determination in his eyes. Implement Chaos Protocol, he ordered. Captain Lee looked surprised. Sir? That's untested in actual combat. Now's the time to test it, Norton replied firmly. Lee nodded and transmitted the orders. Across the human fleet, captains received the unexpected command. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The human ships broke formation, each vessel suddenly executing seemingly random maneuvers. Some charged forward, others pulled back. Some cut power to weapons and diverted energy to engines, while others did the opposite. The Ardelian observers watched in confusion. "What are they doing?" Trell asked. "They're breaking formation, losing coordination." "No," Rivera replied with a tight smile. "They're being human." On the tactical display, the perfect Vex formation faltered for the first time. Their ships, programmed to counter logical attack patterns, struggled to adapt to the unpredictable human movements. "They're machines that think linearly," Norton explained to the bewildered Ardelians. "Humans evolved to hunt creatures that ran in zigzags. Sometimes the optimal solution isn't the right one." The tide of battle began to shift. Human ships darted in and out of range, striking where least expected, retreating when the Vex adjusted. The mechanical precision of the enemy fleet became a weakness as they struggled to predict the seemingly random human attacks. But the Vex were learning. Within an hour, they began to adapt once more, developing new patterns to counter the human chaos. "They're adjusting again," Reed warned. "Our advantage is slipping." Norton's face showed no concern. Instead, he smiled slightly. "Time for the real surprise," he said quietly. He turned to Communications Officer Petra. "Signal the boarding teams. Execute Operation Trojan." Across the rear of the human fleet, bay doors opened on specialized boarding vessels. The small, heavily armored ships rocketed toward the Vex fleet, weaving through the battle with incredible speed. The Vex, focused on calculating weapon trajectories and fleet movements, failed to register the tiny craft as significant threats. This was their critical mistake. "What are those?" asked Trell, pointing to the small ships on the display. "Those," said Rivera with pride, "are our Marines, the best fighters humanity has ever produced." The boarding craft slammed into the hulls of the largest Vex vessels. Cutting tools and explosives created entry points. From each craft emerged squads of armored human soldiers, carrying weapons and determination into the heart of the enemy. "You're sending your people inside the enemy ships?" gasped an Ardelian observer. "That's suicide." "That's humanity," corrected Norton. "We don't accept no-win scenarios." On the main screen, helmet camera feeds from the boarding team showed the interior of the Vex vessels. The human soldiers moved through narrow corridors, facing mechanical defenders and strange biological components that seemed to be part of the ships themselves. The Ardelians watched in awe as the humans fought their way deeper into the Vex command ships. Where Ardelians would have retreated, humans advanced. Where logic said to surrender, humans found another way. "Look at them," whispered Trell. "They're not just strong. They're relentless." The battle outside continued, but now the Vex ships fought with decreasing coordination. As human teams reached their central control systems and planted explosive devices, the once perfect enemy formation began to fall apart. "It's working," announced Reed excitedly. "The Vex fleet is losing cohesion." Norton allowed himself a small smile. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Full attack. Hit them while they're confused." The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. The Vex, with their central command structure compromised by the boarding teams, could no longer coordinate their defenses effectively. One by one, the massive Vex ships began to explode or drift powerless. The smaller vessels, apparently dependent on directions from the larger ones, became erratic in their movements. After 6 hours of intense fighting, the remaining Vex ships suddenly turned and accelerated away from the battle, jumping to faster than light speed and disappearing into the void. "They're retreating," confirmed Captain Lee, her voice reflecting the disbelief of everyone on the bridge. A cheer erupted from the human crew. Norton allowed it for a moment before raising his hand for silence. "Damage. Report," he ordered. 17 ships lost, 32 damaged, replied Lee soberly. Casualty numbers still coming in. The celebration faded as the cost of victory became clear. Norton turned to face the Ardelian observers. "Your colony is safe," he said simply. "For now." Trell stepped forward, his eyes filled with a new emotion. Respect. "How did you know the boarding strategy would work?" he asked. Norton looked back at the tactical display where rescue ships were already moving to retrieve survivors. "We didn't," he admitted. "But humans have always understood something that machines never will. Sometimes you have to do the unexpected, the irrational, the seemingly impossible. That's how we survived on Earth. That's how we'll survive out here." The Ardelians looked at the Death Worlders with new understanding. The very unpredictability they had feared was what had saved them.
All.
3 months had passed since the Battle of Nebulon 6. The Ardelian capital world shone like a jewel beneath the light of 3 suns. In the grand meeting hall of the High Council, representatives from all 52 worlds gathered for a historic occasion. The room was decorated with both Ardelian and human symbols. Delicate crystal sculptures stood alongside sturdy earth plants. The two cultures, so different in form and philosophy, had begun to find common ground. Admiral Norton entered the hall, wearing his formal uniform. Though the fabric was freshly pressed, careful eyes could spot hastily repaired damage, a reminder of his close call during the final confrontation with the Vex mothership. Behind him walked his senior staff and a selection of ship captains who had distinguished themselves in battle. The Ardelians rose as the humans entered. No longer did they shrink back in fear at the sight of the Death Worlders. Now there was respect in their eyes, and something more: gratitude. High Counselor Mara, who had once been the strongest voice against contacting Earth, stood at the center of the raised platform. Her white robes were more elaborate than usual, marking the importance of the day. "Admiral Norton," she said, her voice carrying through the quiet hall, "please step forward." Norton approached the platform, his stride confident but not aggressive. He had learned to move carefully in the presence of the more delicate Ardelians. "The remaining Vex forces have been driven from our cluster," Mara announced. "Thanks to the brave actions of the human fleet and the coordination of our combined forces." Norton nodded in acknowledgement. "The threat is contained but not eliminated," he replied. "The Vex will analyze their defeat and return, stronger. Next time, you need to be ready." There was murmuring among the Ardelian representatives. The idea of preparing for war was still foreign to many of them. Mara raised her hand for silence. "We have taken your words to heart, Admiral. Already, volunteers from our worlds have begun training with human instructors. We are learning difficult lessons. Necessary ones," Norton corrected gently. "Yes," Mara agreed. "Necessary." She straightened her shoulders. "I have an announcement to make. The High Council has voted unanimously to request a permanent human presence in our sector, a defense pact, cultural exchange, and open borders for trade and migration." A ripple of surprise passed through the human delegation. Norton raised an eyebrow. "After centuries of quarantine, you're inviting the dangerous Death Worlders into your homes?" he asked with the hint of a smile. "We were wrong," said a familiar voice. Commander Trell stepped forward to stand beside Mara. "We feared your strength, your evolutionary adaptations, your capacity for violence. We didn't understand that the same forces that made you dangerous also instilled in you a profound drive to protect." Norton looked around the hall, seeing nods of agreement from the Ardelian representatives. "That's a significant change of heart," he observed. "When faced with extinction," Trell replied, "one's perspective tends to shift." Mara presented Norton with a crystal tablet. On it was inscribed the proposed treaty between Earth and the Ardelian cluster, an alliance that would forever change the future of both civilizations. "President Calloway has reviewed the terms," Norton said, accepting the tablet. "Earth is prepared to sign." The treaty signing ceremony was broadcast across both human and Ardelian space. On 52 worlds and on distant Earth, billions watched as two species, once separated by fear, joined their futures together. The terms were simple but powerful. Humans would establish defense outposts throughout the cluster, training Ardelian forces and providing protection. In return, the Ardelians would share their advanced medical and environmental technologies with Earth, technologies that could help heal the scars left by centuries of human warfare and industrial development. 1 week later, Norton stood on the observation deck of the Thunderchild, watching as the first human colony ships entered Ardelian space. They carried families and civilians who would establish permanent settlements in the cluster. At the same time, Ardelian scientists had begun arriving on Earth, bringing with them knowledge that promised to transform human society. Their air cleaning technology alone could reverse decades of pollution in months. Captain Lee joined Norton at the viewport. "The first defense stations are already operational," she reported. "The Ardelians learn quickly when they put their minds to it." Norton nodded. "They'll need to. The Vex will return, and they won't be alone. There are many threats in this galaxy." "At least they won't face them alone anymore," Lee said. Norton smiled slightly. "Neither will we." Commander Trell entered the observation deck, moving with growing confidence among the humans. He had volunteered to be the Ardelian liaison to the Earth Defense Fleet and had spent many hours learning human customs and military protocols. "Admiral," he greeted Norton, "may I speak with you privately?" Norton nodded, and they moved to a quiet corner of the deck. Through the viewport, they could see the stars stretching out to infinity. "I still don't fully understand why you came," Trell confessed. "After how we treated your species, quarantining Earth, denying you your place in the galactic community." Norton looked out at the stars, thinking of humanity's long, violent history, how they fought and killed one another for millennia before finally finding unity. "We came because you were afraid," he said simply. "On Earth, for most of our history, fear was a constant companion. We know what it's like to feel helpless against forces beyond your control. No sentient being should have to face that alone." Trell was silent for a moment. "The old council believed that your aggressive instincts made you too dangerous to join the wider community. They never considered that those same instincts could make you our greatest protectors." "Humans are complicated," Norton agreed. "We can be builders or destroyers. It's all in how we channel our nature." He turned to face Trell directly. "Your people evolved in peace and harmony. Mine evolved fighting for survival every day. Both paths created intelligent, sentient beings worthy of respect. But when danger comes, you need both kinds, those who know how to heal and those who know how to fight." "Balance," Trell said thoughtfully. "Exactly." Norton gestured to the stars. "There's room out there for all of us, the peaceful and the warriors. And sometimes, the warriors are the ones who ensure the peaceful can stay that way." In the months that followed, human ships traveled throughout the Ardelian cluster, establishing bases and training centers. Ardelian volunteers, once afraid of violence in any form, learned the basics of defense and strategy. Meanwhile, human children on Earth began attending schools designed with Ardelian principles, learning to value harmony alongside strength. Environmental damage that had seemed permanent began to heal under the guidance of Ardelian science. The galaxy watched this unexpected alliance with interest and some concern. Other species, who had also avoided contact with the dangerous humans, began to reconsider their positions. The message spread across the stars. The Deathworlders of Earth were not to be feared, but perhaps to be welcomed. For when darkness threatened, there was no better ally than a species that had evolved to face death and emerge stronger. And on the edge of known space, other powers took note. The Vex Collective processed the information and adjusted their plans. Various ambitious empires reconsidered their expansion strategies. For the first time in millennia, predatory civilizations paused before striking weaker neighbors, because now they knew: harm one peaceful world, and you might find yourself facing the full might of humanity. The Deathworlders, who had made it, their mission to protect those who could not protect themselves. The SOS that had sparked fear had revealed a profound truth. Sometimes, the most dangerous species in the galaxy are precisely the allies you need when facing extinction. The end.